Welcome to the Love Lab Podcast, a safe and fun place to get real and learn about sex. Whether you're a man or woman, single or couple, this is the show for you. I am your host, Kevin Anthony, and I am here to guide you to go from good to amazing in the bedroom and your relationships. All right, welcome back to the Love Lab Podcast. This is episode 293, and it is titled The Shocking Rise in STIs and How to Avoid Them. You know, listeners of the show know that I do pre-interviews with guests, and I do have a guest today, so if you're watching on video, you can see that already. And sometimes when I have those interviews, I get really excited to have a conversation, and today is one of those because some of the things that my guest today shared with me in the pre-interview were actually somewhat shocking to me. And I felt like we really needed to have this conversation and we really needed to get this information out there. So we're going to be talking about STIs, or that's the more modern terminology, but STDs if you're using the older terminology. We're going to be talking about what's going on out there right now, in the wild, so to speak, with STIs. Which ones are, on the rise, more prominent? What are we seeing out there? We're going to talk about how we can avoid them. We're going to talk about treatment for them. And we're going to talk about some new technology here that can really make this so much easier than it has ever been before. And, at the age of basically 50 at this point, and having spent, most of my dating life when I was younger, without access to any type of technology or anything like this, I look back and I go, wow, how much different the dating process would have been had we had access to something like this. So I think this is going to be a very interesting show. So I suggest you stick around and find out what we're going to talk about today. So before we do that, though, short word from my sponsor. Power and Mastery 3.0 is here. The men's sexual mastery program you have heard about on this show for a long time is now even better. I have personally reviewed every module, lesson, video, audio, and PDF to see if there's anything new that needed to be added. As a result, I have added 10 new videos, 1 new audio, 8 new PDFs, and dozens of links to handpicked products to help support your journey to mastery. In addition, there's also a brand new user interface that makes it easier to navigate the course and find your course materials. So if you are ready to become the sexual master you have always wanted to be, then go now to powerandmastery.com. I can already foresee adding a link to the product that we're going to be talking about today as a resource for everybody that is in that program, because this is definitely an important part of mastering your sexuality. So check out powerandmastery.com. All right. So my guest today is Dr. Yudara. Oh boy, I'm gonna struggle with this last name, but I'm gonna try it. Kularathne. You can correct me later. He is the founder of something called HeHealth.ai, which we are going to be talking about a lot today, which is a sexual healthcare app that offers a safe, anonymous, and accessible solution for men to screen for early signs of penis problems, including STIs, STDs, and penile cancer. Utilizing artificial intelligence validated by doctors, the app provides actionable steps and connects users to a trusted clinic network, ensuring 100% privacy and security for men. So welcome to the show, Dr. Yudara.
Thanks, Kevin. It's a pleasure. And you did get it right.
Thank you. All right. So I really want to jump right in. And it's gonna get a little heavy, a little quick, but then it's gonna get a little lighter. So during the pre-interview, you told me a story about how you got into this, because you haven't, although you are a doctor, I actually didn't read the fact that you are an MD, FAMS, but you weren't specializing in sexually transmitted infections or diseases or anything like that previously. Not that you didn't have experience, but it wasn't your specialty. But something happened personally in your life with somebody that changed that course. And I'm wondering if you can share that story with the listeners.
Yeah, Kevin, definitely, definitely. I think that truly explains where the gap in the society. The time was 2019, just before the COVID. During the Christmas time, I get a text from one of my best friends saying, "Thanks for being a good friend." That's all. And I am knowing him for the longest time. We don't talk like that. He never ever texts me like that. And me as an emergency physician, yes, you were correct. I was not a specialist in sexual health diseases. I was an emergency physician. I have worked in the emergency department. I have seen in the ER room that people, when they try to commit suicide, or after committing suicide, leave these notes, something very similar. And I got immediately scared of this fact and then tried to call him. He didn't answer the phone. And I called another friend of ours, and then we quickly rushed to his house. And we were right, boy. He was on the balcony in the eighth floor about to jump. And lucky for everybody, we managed to grab him and bring him to the home and then ask him what the heck is going on. Then he initially didn't want to share. He said, "Look, I did something super stupid. Let me die." I was like, "Dude, we can help you out, like just tell us what's going on." And then he said, "I'm dying." I was like, "What do you mean you are dying? You are young." At that time, he was like in 30s. And I happens to know his medical records as a physician. I manage things and I knew it's in pristine condition. He was a married person. He had a kid, and the wife and the kid was away for Christmas, which he's supposed to join in 1 or 2 days at that time. And I was pushing him and said, "Tell me what happened. Tell me what's going on." Then he finally starts sharing with me and said, "Look, I don't want to even talk to you because I feel so embarrassed. I feel I'm breaking everyone's trust." I said, "Look, treat me as a doctor. Tell me what's going on." He said, "There was a party a few days ago to celebrate the Christmas and my promotion at workplace. There was many drinks. I had to enjoy with everybody. And next day morning, I wake up, I couldn't remember anything at all. And not only that, I was naked. There was a naked lady on my bed, which I don't know who that is. So I completely freaked out. I kick her out of the house. I didn't even ask who that is. After that, I got even more scared, knowing that I don't know who that is. And then I quickly washed. I went to washroom to have a shower, try to wash things off. And then I realized I have an ulcer in my penis. And then I got scared. And the next thing he did is, in all these things, he tried to Google. And we know as is of this time, most of the big tech, including Google, they kind of blocks most of the sexual health related things. And sexual health is not adult health. It's not adult industry, but sadly, people cannot access. That was the problem. And Google algorithms work in a way that the more pronounced action the people will usually exhibit, that will promote into the highest. And sadly, in the health, those are the extreme cases like you have a cancer, you have HIV, something similar. So my friend's impression he got is he have HIV. Sadly, not only that, next thing he knew is that he is going to die from HIV and there's no cure, which all these facts are not accurate at this point. And after that, I told him, "Look, I don't think it happens like this clearly. It takes at least few weeks to get the positive results. Let me help you." I, as a doctor, examined his penis and I couldn't see any abnormality at all. I was like, "Where's the rash you were talking about?" He was like, "Here's the rash." Actually, I was like, "Do you know this is actually quite normal after sex, which is a completely physiological situation called polypapules?" And he did not know about it. And of course, there was no trigger for him to worry, so he didn't think about it before. That let me think of why guys cannot get personalized information in this kind of situation without embarrassing themselves. So that was the question. So I go back, I have engineering background on top of being a physician. Get me put on the engineering hat. I create a very simple app through using some internet pictures to tell what a normal penis looks like using artificial intelligence. I shared with my friend. He started sharing with his friend. That became a massive hit. And I realized guys actually don't know how to assess their penis by themselves. And that led me to one thing. And then slowly we come here as a He Health, which is helping men to detect STIs using artificial intelligence. personalized information through their phone. Happy to go into a little bit more details later, Kevin.
Yeah, we will talk a whole lot more about that and how it works and how it can fit into, somebody's personal protection sort of program because it has a lot of potential. But the reason I really wanted you to share that story is because it really illustrates the importance of having good information. And that's why I really wanted to do the show. This is another way of trying to get good information out there. Here is somebody who had a wife, who had a whole life, and he was literally willing to end it all because he got bad information about a bad decision he made once. Right? I mean, that's how serious this can potentially be. So we don't want that to happen to anybody else. And that's really what we're talking about here. So now that we understand the seriousness of the situation and how people view things like having an STI, let's talk a little bit about what's going on out there in the real world right now when it comes to STIs. You shared a fact with me that absolutely just blew my mind because I was not aware of this. I had not seen this anywhere. I mean, I'm sure it's been reported in the news somewhere. It's not like I see everything that's out there. But what you shared with me was that we are currently in the US having the worst syphilis outbreak in 300 years. What's going on there? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Kevin. Actually, this surprises a lot of people, including physicians, MDs like me. After the COVID, during the COVID, we were all focusing about COVID, and then people didn't realize that there were few other forgotten diseases like syphilis, which is a sexually transmitted infection, is really growing without not much people noticing. And then, especially for ladies, when they have syphilis, if they give birth to a baby, they might have something called congenital syphilis. The syphilis in the body transfer into the baby, and then that causes lots of very, very bad problems in the small babies. And congenital syphilis is considered as actually the old world disease, which most of the people forget about it. But this year we realized we're having one of the most worst outbreaks of syphilis, congenital syphilis, and so on and so forth. These things should have been prevented and being cured at that time. It's relatively easy to treat disease. But if you don't treat, it's going to hide in your body and continue to grow as what you call secondary syphilis or congenital syphilis, and it can have really bad outcomes. And let me come back to the numbers actually. US is not the only country was surprised with these facts. In London, we are having one of the worst syphilis outbreaks ever. And these are happening after like so many years of very well control. Tokyo was having one of the worst syphilis outbreaks right now. So everybody got surprised with this new kind of trend happening around the world in big cities. And a lot of people caught off guard. Like suddenly this number this year is really bad. But sadly, in the healthcare, the second part is that usually people follow the trends, but trend is always slightly lagged. That means we talk about this last year, 2023 data. And that means most likely by the time we take the action in 2024, the numbers are still growing. So when it comes to sexual health, STIs, how they spread is people, when they have disease, they don't know that they have disease, they do not get treated, and they continue to have sex so that it spreads. So we might be actually having the worst situation ever right now.
Yeah, that just blew my mind. Do you have any insight into why suddenly we're seeing this in these major cities? Like, because as you rightly pointed out, this was something that we had relatively under control. And okay, so COVID, that I'm sure that's a factor in there somehow, but yet at the same time, like COVID shut a lot of people down where they weren't maybe out dating as much as they were previously. So, maybe it's a little counterintuitive what's happening here.
Yeah, Kevin. Actually, for us physicians who have some background in population health, it kind of makes sense, but most of the doctors still it was a surprising fact. So let me explain. The situation is actually a little bit more complicated than a one single fact, but let me put it this way. So during the COVID, the all the resources, which includes the money, the equipments, and the human resources, which is the doctors and nurses, were allocated to the COVID-related projects. Either it's a vaccination, either it's treating COVID, and so on and so forth. Then, of course, in US, we have a limited amount of resources when it comes to money and human resources, especially. If you pull these things from somewhere, you can guess where this somewhere is. So there was lots of STI clinics is being closed during the COVID. And assumption was that, oh, people are under restrictions of, like not moving too much. People are under lockdown, so on and so forth. So there will be less sexual activity. But we were wrong. Actually, it kind of increased silently under the carpet that there was more sex happening, more diseases spreading. We pulled the people out. There was less screening, less testing. And then suddenly, when we put back the resources into the STI clinics, bam, we realized suddenly the numbers are so high. So that's exactly what happened. But of course, there were multiple other socio-economic situations which contribute to this. But I think the biggest fact happened is we kind of divert our attention plus the resources, and then we completely missed other things.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, that simply shifting the focus of the funding and the manpower had such a dramatic effect. That really tells me that you are absolutely on the right track with what you've created because I think it was I think it was Hippocrates who said like if you are not your own doctor, you're a fool or some similar quote. Don't quote me exactly on that one, but the point is that you know if we rely on the system 100%, when the system changes, you know, we think we're protected and we're not, right? And so having the ability to take some responsibility for our own health and our own sexual health, I think is extremely important and also extremely empowering.
Yeah, Kevin, you are right. Honestly, I also don't know who was the person who said that quote, but I have heard it. But as a physician, I can tell you for sure that has to be the way. You have to be responsible for your health. Plus, when it comes to sexual health, it's actually being respectful for the other. Because if you have a disease which you didn't treat, you introduce the same disease to the other person, which is your loved one, your partner. So that makes things even worse. So it's even more responsible or respectful that you look after your sexual health well. But coming back to your thing we said, so nowadays, if you don't have the physical resources, the technology is growing to a point that you have digital resources. And if you look at the bigger picture, the dating has completely shifted to digital means. I saw an article today in the morning. I was reading from 1970s to 2022, 2 years ago. They mapped the dating scene, which is previously the bigger numbers were through friends, through the family, through the church. These numbers have come down to a point that you cannot even see the percentages, and the online dating has completely skyrocketed to the covering the majority of it. So yes, digital means are here to stay. People are adopting to these means. So why not the sexual health part? So we used to quote, "He health brings medicine into the Tinder age." Like we bring things into the right place, right time, and then people can use by themselves. As far as you know how to operate a phone, they should be able to get personalized information through the phone. That's what we do.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, and this is true of pretty much anything in society, but when you have a technology like online dating that comes in and radically changes the way that people date, then there needs to be other technologies that pop up to support that radical shift. So, yeah, absolutely. I'm curious also, so we focused primarily so far on syphilis just because that number was so shocking. But are we seeing rises in other types of STIs as well?
So if you look at the CDC report on US STI, so there's good, bad, and ugly. So if you look at the number of diseases, certain diseases going up, very few going down. But overall, as a country, STIs are on the rise. And it's not in small percentage, it's slightly on the larger numbers, to 5% to 10% at that level. And if you look at certain states are getting better, but certain states getting really, really bad. If you look at how the states move in the STI performance scale, some states getting better, but some states, which the state I live in, California, is really going down and the situation is getting worse. So there's that's the good, bad. And then, of course, the ugly part is things like syphilis, which is completely treatable, preventable, and easy to recognize. Technology like e-health, they can clearly differentiate what a syphilis ulcer looks like and not, is really sadly going up with a lot of complications. Like, as I said, kids who are born, babies who are born with these complicated things because of syphilis.
Wow. So overall in the US, we're seeing a trend up in multiple different STIs. I find that very interesting, though, that some states are going up while others are going down. I mean, that to me indicates that this has something to do with, it's got to have something to do with either policy and or potentially the cultural views in those particular areas. I mean, I don't know if you've got any personal thoughts on that or not, or if you even want to share them. But I just find it fascinating, right? Because uh, to me, I want to understand why in some places is it getting higher and why in some places is it getting lower.
Yeah, Kevin, we as scientists, we clearly analyze this data and there's a very clear pattern. So I'm not going to go into detail, especially in a year where we are looking into the presidential election. But there is a clear relationship to some of the political policies we bring and the political ideology we follow and the STI spreads. So actually, it's quite sad to see in a way because these are medical problems. So should be managed with the science. So it should be one truth, not few multiple shades of truth, like what we believe in political scene. So it should be managed in a scientific, more medical manner. But sadly, things are the outcomes are, I would say, is related to some of the views and other things related in the politics. Yes.
That doesn't surprise me. That's honestly what I assumed, which is why I told you that you didn't have to share your thoughts on that if you didn't want to. I don't want this show to be politically polarizing. I just want people to get information. And the reason I asked
100%.
that question was because I want people to have enough information to make good decisions. And yeah, I'm not at all surprised to hear that there are consequences to political decisions that are made. And will, I mean, I have my own ideas of what those political decisions were and how they've contributed to this. But for now, we will leave that up to the listener to decide, what they think about that. But just know that that is a factor, and that who you choose to make those legislative and political decisions for you is having an impact on the quality of your life in many ways. This is just one of them.
Yep, Kevin, I 100%. That's why I didn't make any names, but clearly this is what the people have to go and find out. But I think we live in a society where the politics clearly affects our own health. The social determinants are much bigger than we used to think. Actually, it's so funny. I had a meeting just before this is with a physician from Rhode Island talking about social determinants in primary care and how it affects and how it's trying to solve this problem. So it is there, we all know it, and then it's up to us to figure it out how we can navigate through these things. Yes, but I think our guide, especially me as a physician, is not to judge and to guide them through, give the right information and let them choose for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, it's on the one hand, it's somewhat frustrating to hear that, something like, a 300-year all-time high, epidemic is caused by those types of things. But the good news about that is that we ourselves have the power to change that as long as we have the right information. We're not subject to some, immutable outside external factor that we have no control over. Like, we can actually shift this simply by having good information and making better decisions. So that's the upside of it.
Indeed.
Okay. We're about halfway through. I'm going to take a short break and read the second sponsor ad. And then I want to come back and talk about what people can do about preventing it. And then, of course, if they do actually get one. And that's going to give us an opportunity to really talk about how what you've created factors into that. Okay, hey guys, do you know what makes a man great? You know, the kind of masculine man that women are irresistibly attracted to and want. Is it money, job title, his physical body? Is it because he's great in bed or has great pickup lines? What if you don't have those or you only have some of them? What if you've had a string of failed relationships and are embarrassed by your bedroom skills? Maybe you doubt whether you can rise to the occasion, worry about lasting long enough, or are always stuck in the friend zone. I can help you if you're ready to make big changes and finally become the man you have always wanted to be, then this is the program for you. Please go to kevinandceline.com/go/warrior. That is my men's sexual mastery coaching program. And in that, we work on all sorts of things from how to show up and be a strong, positive, masculine man, how to have great bedroom skills, how to, do exactly what we're talking about today. Take responsibility for your health and the health of your partner. We cover all of that stuff in that program. So go check out kevinandceline.com/go/warrior. All right. So we've talked about the scope of the problem. Let's talk now about let's start with prevention. What can people do to not end up with an STI to start with?
Yeah. Thanks, Kevin. Again, this is, I think, the most important fact. So what can we do? So it's quite clear in science part. So first thing is, most importantly, understand about ourselves and the diseases and be responsible and do regular testing. STIs, one of the reasons why it's spreading so much, despite of we having advanced technologies, it can be asymptomatic. That means you might not know in the first place that you have a STI. So what we as doctors, we used to say, if you are sexually active, get it tested regularly. Make it a habit for testing. So like what we always say, if you do a health check every year, just add few of the STIs, including into that test. Like same we do with the dental checks every year. The best is if you are having multiple partners, you can actually make it much shorter duration, like every 3 months, you do some basic testing, which should include HIV, for example, and then all the other things, so that you know. That's the first part. The second part is, of course, as much as possible, you must use protection, condoms. And I know people would have different ideas, preferences when it comes to this. That's why some people in the medicine advancement, something called pre-exposure prophylaxis. So there are some medications you can take it so that you won't get the disease or you won't spread it to anybody else. But the pre-exposure prophylaxis, what they call PrEP, also have some new problems brought to the thing because it only covers on certain diseases like HIV. It doesn't cover other things. So people had this notion that, oh, I'm on this medication, so I should be protected, but not knowing that it doesn't cover everything. Of course, now they have the second one, what they call doxypep came in. You should be able to cover most of it if you take together, but still the knowledge gap is there. So first, understand it, take the responsibility, do regular testing, and then use the protection as much as possible. Know the things, adopt the technology so that you can actually do. Last part I'm going to touch is how eHealth can help. So what eHealth does best is to help guys to identify things super fast. If you look at the same WHO report I talk so far in detail, that talks about a guy to get the STI diagnosis. After starting symptoms, it takes 3 months, half of the population. Mark my words again, it takes 3 months to get a diagnosis for 50% of the men. So that means they might be having ulcer, they might be having a discharge, still it takes 3 months to get a diagnosis. This is not acceptable. So what we are doing is we use our technology to, for simple as take a picture, answer a few questions. We can tell you immediately within few seconds. So that means you saw some symptoms, you are experiencing some symptoms, we in 1 or 2 minutes able to guide you through and tell you what you have very clearly. Plus, not only that, to connect to a doctor and get it sorted out. We said there are 3 months, we bring it to 24 hours. We are operational in California right now, should be operational in all the states in Q2 onwards, which is very soon. We are very excited for this. And that means that 3 months we are bringing it to one day. What it means to the spread is that so that you avoid so many partners you are going to have sex while you're having symptoms, while you are spreading the disease, which makes the disease spread more and more. You break that point at that then and there so that the number should slowly start going down. That's how you control it. That's how you best look after yourself and your partners.
Yeah, that is truly amazing. Uh, from 3 months down to basically a day. I mean, that is a huge, huge shift. And you're right. If you, a lot of unintended exposure can happen in 3 months. A lot less can happen in a couple of days. So that is really, really changing that paradigm, which is amazing. I want to go back also and say, you started off by saying the most important thing is to get tested regularly. And that is something definitely that I wanted to come back to and sort of reiterate because, you know, I've had a lot of experience and I've talked about it extensively on the show, as did my wife, in, like what they call polyamory or like open relationships and stuff like that. And in that world, this is talked about openly all the time and strongly encouraged. It's taught all the time about, okay, if you have a new potential partner, here's the elevator speech, right? Here's all the things. The last time I was tested, I got tested for these things. This was my result. And they're really pretty darn good about doing that. However, that's like a small sort of niche community. And what we see outside of that is the complete opposite. I used to have a friend who, he's just, a regular guy out there on the dating apps like everybody else. And, he would sometimes give me a hard time because, oh, you hang out with those weird, poly people. And one day I said to him when he was kind of, for lack of a better term, just sort of giving me a hard time about it. I said, how many people have you had sex with in the last year? He couldn't actually give me the number. Because he was doing what most people do, this sort of serial dating thing. It's just on the apps, going out, having sex with that. That didn't work out. Going out, having another. I said, I've had sex with 3 people the entire year. And it's the same 3 people the entire year. You can't even tell me how many you've had sex with. And by the way, when was the last time you got STI tested? Which was never. Now he happened to be lucky. He happened to, as far as we know, I haven't seen him in a few years because he moved far away. But that's kind of just showing you what is really happening out there. Like a lot of people are out there on these dating sites. It's not so much that, like in his case, he was genuinely trying to find his person. He wasn't, doing the whole like pickup artist thing and just trying to have sex with as many. But even through that process, he was having a lot of sex with a lot of different women and had never been tested, right? And so that's something that we really see out there. And what I would love is a way, and I think this is one of the places that eHealth can really help facilitate, is I would love to see out there in the mainstream world of dating, it become more common for people to just get screened regularly. I know here where I live in Southern California, like I said, my experience with that community, the local county health clinic, and they charge a little bit more now, but it used to be ridiculously inexpensive. And so people would go, some would go once every 6 months. People that were super active might go once every 3 months, as you suggested. It was a little bit of an inconvenience, but it really wasn't that big a deal. It didn't really cost you much of anything. And it gave you the peace of mind to know that not only were you okay, but other people were okay too. So that piece you shared about getting tested regularly is huge.
Yeah, Kevin, you are spot on this. So a lot of people, until you realize that what you're doing, the intention, obviously, me as a physician, we don't judge on behavior. We are here to facilitate. the medical part of it, like whatever the behavior you want to adopt, we are fine with it, and we are here to help you to protect yourself and the partners. Very clear. But if you look at it, that same example is just he was not intended to do it, but as a way of he going through this process, he ended up having a lot of sex with multiple partners, which he never thought that, look, I'm actually actively having sex with multiple partners, which none of the partners have actually testing. This is really, really shocking. I'm pretty sure he might have not realized this also, because to him, given at one point, okay, I'm going to have a relationship with this person and I'm going to have sex. So it's one on one, but it doesn't, in the bigger picture, when you look at it, it doesn't reflect as it is. So these are some of the things we actually might oversee. And then, like what happened to my friend, he didn't intend it, but it happens. And then it's just one occasion, but that can ruin his life. So your friend is lucky, but I don't use the word lucky because it's matter of time.
Yeah.
And and you have to be like proactive on your health and to protect yourself. And most of the things can be actually cured or very well controlled if you know early. That's why you need to do early testing and regular testing. But when it comes to e-health, I want to add this also. Nowadays, a lot of people do so-called at-home testing, like you don't go to the clinic, but you mail the kits to the home and then you do it and then you mail back.
Mhm.
So with this problem is that a lot of people don't understand the difficulty of deciding what test to do at what point. Because all these diseases have so-called window periods and then exposure and then symptoms. These are all complicated matters. But what we doing at eHealth is we get all this information as input, we streamline, make it a very simple step like, okay, day one, you need to do this. Day 15, you need to do this. Day 30, you need to do this. We will give them the plan so that we actually can map the window periods, make sure that they're actually truly negative. Because sometimes what happens is you do by yourself, you might get a negative result, but it might not say anything at all of what you have. So those are the limitations. That's why now the technology is mature enough. We bring it to them. We can actually very nicely guide them as that you have a physician in your phone 360, 24/7, that kind of level.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about how this app actually works. Like how would somebody use it in their day-to-day dating life? Like what you mentioned that they can take pictures and upload, but it also connects. Like how exactly would they use this on a regular basis?
Yeah, very simple. So we make it so easy. So when you want to have the services or when you have a problem, you go into our website, you get into our app, and then you answer. We do not collect any personal information at the beginning, like name, phone number, or any of the things related to you. So it's a completely anonymous service. You just go in and say when is the last sexual contact you had. Of course, how old are you? What is your gender preference? And then, of course, the anatomical symptoms, whether you have a penis pain, whether you have a discharge, you have an ulcer on the penis, whatever you think you know or you understand, you can just put these things. And then comes to the picture upload. So if you think of when you go to doctor asks the same things. And then, of course, he said, let me have examine your penis. In this case, what happens is instead of the doctor examining, you can upload a picture. AI doctor can analyze these pictures for STIs. And obviously, AI was trained in millions of pictures of different pathologies, STIs, even rare things like cancer. So that what AI does is, again, now the technology is very smart. So it analyzes the exposure, all the symptoms, plus whatever the things he can see in the penis. And then he will tell you personally, okay, this is this and that. But the beauty is that if you don't see anything in the penis picture, it can still guide you through of what you're supposed to do based on the symptoms you have. So, for example, you might have nothing, no symptoms. You had unprotected sex. You are freaking out next day. It can guide you through what are the tests you're supposed to do and so on and so forth very clearly. So that's where the technology is right now. The process is very simple. And after that, say if you have positive results, say you might be having a syphilis infection at that time, then it will guide you. There's a banner. You can simply click. It goes to our partner doctors in the whatever the states you are living, and they can actually have a teleconsult, have a call over the video call, and then they can send you a prescription, which you can fill it up from CVS very fast.
I think this is absolutely amazing, and I honestly feel this is a service to humanity. I mean, I hope you make money on it as well, but this is literally a service to humanity, providing this level of care. Because one thing that we haven't talked about so far, but is true, is this idea that there's so much stigma around STIs, and the fact that a lot of people literally will not go seek the help that they need for fear of anything. Like if they're young people, it's fear of getting in trouble with their parents because they're not supposed to be having sex. With older people, it's fear of stigma of, oh, now I have an STI and somehow I'm broken. Like people won't actually go get the care they need. And this takes a lot of that out, right? A lot of that shame of having to go to the doctor or admit whatever, right? And so I see it as a huge service to humanity.
Yeah, Kevin. And my third co-founder is sexual health behavioral scientist, and he's an openly gay man. So we talk about the behavior, the stigma. So one of the biggest things we realize when people associate the stigma with their personal identity. Once you remove the personal identity from the actual person who's the patient who's suffering, then you get better. So that's why we remove the registration of names at the front. We only register if they need to get the treatment, which is a federal and local regulation requirement. But other than that, until to that step, we do not register them in name. So people feel more comfortable forthcoming. Uh, and then, of course, this is not a physical clinic that you have to stay in, trying to cover your face, thinking that there might be people. Or and if it's through the insurance, that it may be your parents' insurance that they might know, and so on and so forth. We remove all these barriers so that people feel comfortable. That's the first most important part. And of course, then people are willing to come in on board into the system. So last time, like people just suffer, and like my friend, he would rather choose to kill himself rather than get it tested and treated, because of the social stigma. But once you remove that part that he's a married guy, he have a kid, he have a name, he have a society status, once you remove that, he's willing to forthcome and get it tested and so on and so forth. So that's the most important part. I agree with you.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why I wanted to lead with that story because I wanted people to understand that it really is for some people so stigmatized and so just embarrassing that they literally won't get the treatment they need or they're willing to literally jump off a roof. Like so anything that we can do to prevent that from happening, I think is a good thing. There's one more thing that I want to talk about in regards to this. And so we've been talking a lot about, how men can use this, how they can take pictures of their penis and upload it and look for all that kind of stuff. But this could also be valuable for women to potentially have and use also. And I know you have a story about a 19-year-old girl. So I wonder if you could tell that story and then use that to illustrate how women can use this app as well to empower themselves.
Yep. Kevin, it's such a exciting time we have in this conversation. We are having significant number of women using eHealth, and they were not happy with the name eHealth. And I didn't see this coming, honestly. When I think of it, it meant for guys to use. And then I was like, oh my God, I didn't see this coming otherwise. But anyway, we are launching our female version of the app to call Calmara in this Friday, in literally in 3 days' time. But yeah, let me come back to the story. So this is honestly one of the most impactful stories I have heard, which shocked me to the core. So this 19-year-old girl walked into my office with her friend, which is supposed was our marketing intern who used to work for us, and said, "Look, I want to talk to you. Can you please get this on the tape? I want the world to hear." We were like, "Whoa, like what's going on?" We got it on the tape. Of course, we didn't put any faces, but we got an audio tape. And this story is amazing. This is a 19-year-old girl who met a guy in a dating app, which most of the 19-year-old girls do. But these two were very responsible. At least the girl were responsible. She said, "Look, I've been looking to this place. I was literally waiting until 19 so that I can get into these apps or like have a relationship." So she was dating with this guy, talking to him for a few months, and then slowly the relationship going into the sexual health side. They were the nice ones. They talk about it instead of jumping in. Say, "Look, we can actually, like, our relationship is mature enough to have sex, so and so forth. The guy starts sharing some of his penis pictures, and then they plan for a time and date, and then they go ahead and then about to have sex. The girl noticed a rash on the boy's penis. He was like, wait, 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 what is this? I'm not an expert on men's health, clearly, but this looks slightly weird to me. And then the guy said, look, I know myself very well, and it was summer, it's hot, and then this is a heat rash, so that the moisture is there, and then it's simply a heat rash. Then the girl trusted him, and then they go and had sex. But after 1 week, few days later, she got the same rash. Then she completely go bonkers, and then she like, look, I don't have heat rashes at all, and I'm very careful about my side of the equation. And then suddenly she remembered her friend was sharing about he health, which she do the marketing internship. Then she download the app, and then she said, can we test on this, like, can we do this? And then we tested, and then it says herpes simplex infection, which is herpes in simple terms. She was so sad. They both went to the hospital. They confirmed that it's herpes. They got it treated. And then she immediately broke out with that guy because he was clearly not having the sex for the first time. He had a partner. He didn't say it. He didn't test it. He lied to her. But she was telling to us, look, I'm a responsible person, and I'm going to tell this to my partners in the future. I'm not going to do the same thing as what my partner did. And I'm 19. I prepared for my first sexual encounter for my whole life. I bring my own condom, but I didn't have the enough empowerment so that I can make the decision. But imagine if I knew about he health beforehand. She was sharing me. I could have done it as a part of my foreplay. I was like, wow, the things have changed there. I didn't know about these things, but yeah, it's not like you stop and run to a clinic, which is never going to happen. But if it's then and there, you can open the phone, play with it, and then you know that there's a risk. You don't even have to know that there's confirmed that you know that there's a risk. You could have used a condom, and then the disease could have prevented. Lifelong embarrassment and difficulties could have been prevented. I was like, oh my God, I didn't see how important. Yes, letting a guy detect it early and treat, yes, impactful, but preventing a disease from getting it for the lifelong situation, how impactful that is. And that was one of the most impactful. You talk about money, but I hear that story. I was like, okay, now I feel like what we did is all the trouble we went through is makes sense. That product, female branded, done by my all the female team members in the team with all the Gen Z female colors, called Calmara, is coming on this Friday.
That is awesome. I didn't know that you were having a female branded version. I'm very happy to hear that. I was at least excited, that women could use the male version. And it's kind of a heartbreaking story in a sense that she really tried to do everything right. She waited, they talked about it beforehand, like they tried to do it all right, and still in the end she ends up with, herpes, as listeners should know, is with you for life. You can have it under various states of control, but it's always still there, and it's always a potential risk. And so now she has to deal with that, for the rest of her life, even though she tried really hard not to. And so having access to something like this, I think for women is extremely empowering because, yeah, you see something and the guy tells you it's a heat rash. Maybe he even genuinely thinks that, right? But you don't have to trust that, right? And now you've got a resource that you can use. And yeah, imagine if they had been able to use that, take that picture and have it say, oh, there's a significant risk that this is actually herpes. Now you can make a different decision, which is either, for sure use a condom, or just wait and don't have sex when there's an outbreak, right? So yeah, that's amazing. I'm so glad that you guys are working on a female version, and I'm really glad that something like this exists.
Yeah, Kevin, I think this is one of the most impactful parts. That's why whenever the time we had, we quickly make sure, and our female numbers are actually growing faster than the male numbers because females are always more careful about sexual health, not only themselves, but also their partners. And now dating scene, there's so many penis pictures being exchanged online. And my co-founder did a study about this, and then we realized there's about 1 million plus penis pictures have been exchanged in famous dating, sorry, not dating, the texting, messaging apps like Snapchat and so on and so forth. So imagine the impact when you can screen these things for diseases, and then, yeah, it's a I think it's a very interesting time. Plus, it's an empowering thing for girls.
Yeah, absolutely. That's funny because I didn't really have that thought until just now when you were talking about that. But, there's always the joke about the guy sending the dick pic to the girl. Now, ladies, you might actually want a dick pic because you can take that and put it into the app now.
Yep, yep.
Well, all right, that's awesome. Is there any last things that you want to share about STIs or he health or the new version for women that's coming out? Anything you want to share?
No, Kevin, I think this is amazing. What we need to do is to get the message across so that the people know there's options. It's not that they're alone, they're suffering. There are many ways they can get help. That's the most important thing. So once they know that the help is out there, they can, of course, get it out. So that's the message I want to get it. Thanks for hosting me. So it's such a pleasure. And then I'm sure your listeners will benefit from these things.
Yes. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing it. Just a note, the website right now is hehealth.ai, correct?
Yes, correct.
Will there be another one for the new product coming out?
Yes, the female version is called Calmera AI. So it's CALMARA.ai.
Awesome. And there will be links to those in the description of the show so people can find them. I have just one last question for you, and then I ask it to everybody that's on the show. It's up to you how you want to answer it. Some people are like, I got this, no problem. Other people are like, My wife started asking this question when we used to do the show together. And it is, what is your best sexual talent?
That's a very interesting question. I think I take it this way. I think the brain is the most powerful sexual organ we have. So a lot of people don't appreciate it, but with my wife, of course, we think that bonding, the building up, the foreplay, that's where the power comes in. So I think my superpower would be using the brain to get into the right place. Yeah.
That I'm totally in agreement with you about how powerful our brain is. My wife used to say our biggest sexual organ is our brain.
It is.
And yeah, just using that to create that space and that bond, that connection. Absolutely. So that's a fantastic answer. All right, Dr. Yudara, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and what you are up to.
Thanks, Kevin. It's my pleasure.
All right, everybody, that's all the time I have for this episode, and I will see you next week. I hope you liked this episode of the Love Lab podcast. If you enjoyed this show, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. And for more free exclusive content, join me in the Passion Vault at kevinandceline.com/vault. That's kevinandceline.com/vault. Thanks for listening, and remember, as Celine used to say, you're amazing.